How do you know if your own work is any good? Today I want to talk about how we can learn to analyze our own work effectively. It can be really hard to be objective about our own work because we're so close to it. So I'm going to pick a few portfolios of other illustrators and we're going to see what we can learn from them. We're going to see if we can learn what to do, what works, what doesn't work, and then you can apply that same analysis to your own work and portfolio. We generally look at our work through two lenses. The first one, you compare your new work to your old work. And you'll probably always prefer your new work because you're constantly improving if you're doing it right. But it doesn't tell you if your work is at a professional standard yet because there's no reference outside your own little world. The other thing we do is compare our work to other people's work. And often that can have a very negative effect on how we assess our own work. Certainly when I was an illustrator, I'd finish a piece, be really happy with it, then go away for a couple of days, and I'd be looking at my favorite illustrators in the meantime. And when I looked again at that illustration that I'd made, I wouldn't like it anymore because I'd be comparing it to industry professionals, which I wasn't at the time. My work after 6 months experience wasn't likely to be as good as guys that had been doing it for 10 plus years. That's crazy. There is no fair comparison there, so it's not helpful to do it. But you do need to know how to objectively tell if your own work is good, for all kinds of reasons. You need to be able to look at your work and know if it's good enough to send to a potential client or to an agency, for example. You need to be able to assess your own strengths and weaknesses so you know which areas need work and practice. You need to know if you're giving a good first impression to people that visit your website. Comparison isn't the answer. Comparing your work to other artists is not a good way to assess yourself. It's too subjective and emotional. Getting an honest review of your work from an independent professional is great, but not always possible. Getting opinions from your peers and your friends is not always useful. What you've really got to be able to do is take a step back and look at your work or your website as if you'd never seen it before and think about what's working and what isn't working. Try to imagine you're a client or an agent looking for an illustrator and think about what first impression they would get from your work. That isn't easy to do for your own work at all. Just like any skill worth having, it takes time to learn. A really good way to start this process is to analyze other artists' work. We're not comparing because that's not helpful. We're analyzing. We can learn a lot from other artists' work when we take the comparison out of the equation. When you can recognize what works and what doesn't work in another artist's portfolio, that will naturally guide how you work. And eventually you'll be able to look at your own portfolio with fresh, objective eyes and say, this is great. And you'll be right. Creative Boom do a list of hot new illustrators to follow every year. So just for the sake of having a few examples, I've picked out 4 of the artists they've listed this year. I've specifically chosen artists that I've not seen before. And we're going to learn a lot from each of these artists, I bet. I believe, though, I can't be sure that most of these artists are fairly early on in their careers, under 10 years experience, I would say. Here are some of the things that we're going to look for. What kind of work are they good at? What skills do they have? What kind of projects are they suited for? What kind of clients do you think they would appeal to? How well are they presenting their work? Do they have a good range of work in their portfolio? Are they unique? Are they showing their personality? If you could objectively answer all these questions about your own work, then I think you'd be doing pretty well. First up, Cassandra Fountain. What's your first impression here? For me, I love it. This is a well-designed but simple website. I can see all these images clearly. I don't have to click anything to get a good overview of Cassandra's work. I love how colourful all the work is. You know, I really want to click these images. I can see a lot of editorial work here, I think, without even reading anything. I can see the narrative in the images. It's classic editorial. And that, to me, suggests that Cassandra is fairly early on in their career. Nothing wrong with that, just an observation. A nice selection of hand-drawn type. That shows a range of skills. The characters aren't particularly consistent in style. Some don't have faces, some are more realistic, some have a very unique style. And that's not a criticism, really, because you can still see that they all belong to the same illustrator, and I think that's because of the color choices primarily, but other stylistic elements too. Nothing on this front page looks out of place at all to me. Everything on this page is exciting, all killer, no filler. Cassandra has made really good choices on what's being shown here. I can see work on this front page that would appeal to education, editorial, children's, publishing, products and gifts. We've got some greetings cards here already. Sports, business, science and technology even. The characters are either diverse or ethnically ambiguous. I can see some political and gender themes in here, but I wouldn't say that defines it. I could be a client from many different sectors and find something to enjoy here. That's all from the front page. If I click on a project here, great. Yeah, I mean, I can see more if I want to. Even some roughs here, look. But even if I don't click, there's enough on the front page to make me want to hire this artist. This is a really well thought out and enticing portfolio. I don't see any animation here, but that's really the only thing that I think is missing. The About page is not too long. Tells us a lot though. Decent client list. Everything is there if I want to see it, basically. So Cassandra has a great eye for color, a range of skills, a style that is still developing maybe. It's not 100% consistent, but it's pretty recognizable, which is perfect. There are conceptual ideas here, and I suspect some of this work does show the artist's unique point of view on the world, which is, again, perfect. Let's move on to Pete Lloyd. Already we've got big, bold images, which is a great start. I can get a good sense of what this guy's vibe is straight away. Sci-fi, fantasy. I'm guessing Pete is a bit of a movie nerd. He's got a great eye for colour and composition. Great portraits. He's clearly a nature fan too. It's nice to show your personality in your work. And it looks like Pete is really good at what he does. We've got movies, TV, advertising, some editorial too. I think some of this work would appeal to certain areas of publishing. And what we're seeing here is not really that varied. Pete is going all in on a few areas. From this curated selection of work on his front page, Pete is telling us what kind of work he wants to do more of. I suspect he's got other work that's maybe not as exciting as this, and that's okay. You know, maybe he doesn't want to show that kind of work. I could see a situation where Pete would be hired for a corporate magazine or something like that, but he might not want to show that because it's nowhere as exciting as working on movie posters, for example. I don't see many conceptual ideas here like you might find in a science magazine, and none of these works are explaining concepts to us, I don't think. Maybe that's not Pete's vibe. There's not much narrative in these works. They're cinematic and adventurous. They don't tell a story. They entice us into wanting to hear the story, which is kind of perfect for advertising and movie posters. So he's got a great eye for colour and composition. He's showing his interests. I can't be sure on that, but I think it's a safe bet. It's not a unique style really, but he is very good at what he does. The About page is functional again. You know, it tells me what I need to know. Good selection of clients there. I think from this website that Pete has been working for quite a while, long enough to decide what he enjoys working on the most at least. He doesn't feel the need to show a bit of everything, which is fair enough. This portfolio won't appeal to a really broad range of clients. He's not casting a wide net and trying to appeal to everybody. He's using a spear and going after what he wants. Good on you, Pete. Next up, Aisha Tengiz. Wow, awesome. As first impressions go, I love it. This is really colourful and fun, but it also looks really clear and functional too. It looks like everything's on one page here. Client list, different kinds of work. Well, the about page is a little different. Good client list, contact details. That's all very clear. Looks good. This style and vibe isn't going to be for everybody. It may even be quite limiting in what clients Aisha can work with overall. The clients that do like this kind of work will be sold pretty much straight away, I'm sure. But simply because it is so bold and unique and unusual, it doesn't have a broad appeal. Looks like Aisha is a few years out of college, so she's early on in her career, and it looks like she's doing great so far with this style and riding the wave of this particular trend, and that's great. But this style of work will not be in fashion forever. Aisha will need to adapt and evolve to appeal to different clients. It is very recognizable. If you see this work, you'll know who it belongs to, and that is ideal for an illustrator. Aisha's doing her own thing here, I think it's fair to say, and enjoying some success. I'm really pleased to see that. There are a lot of people that do their own thing, though, and don't appeal to anybody. And this is a risky strategy, to be honest. You're not appealing to many different kinds of clients. And in my opinion, at the start of your career, the more clients you can appeal to, the better. An artist like Aisha will have to change course at some point when trends change. Ideally, she'll be doing it a long time before trends change, and staying ahead of the curve. Finally, Max Lerfler. Again, this already looks awesome. Really shows off Max's work in a big, bold way. I suspect this is a more expensive website design. Beginners don't need something as awesome and custom as this. It doesn't make sense to spend a lot of money on a website until you are making a lot of money. So I would guess Max has been working professionally for a bit longer than the others. He's got all his best stuff right there on the front page. I can get a really good sense of Max's vibe and style from a very quick look at his website. There are a lot of influences in Max's work. I guess you'd call it retro futurism or maybe cyberpunk. We've got some surrealism in there, science fiction, occultism, some Art Nouveau elements. There's some collage, 80s airbrush style, and some more straight up graphic design stuff too. Again, the style isn't 100% consistent from one image to another, but it doesn't matter. Max is working in his own area of expertise and influence, and it all works together superbly to make a really unique portfolio. Nothing looks out of place here. Max is showing his wide range of influences and also showing us what he can do with them. A lot of conceptual magazine work here and a lot of music posters and album covers. His work, I would say, is moody, atmospheric, and weird. And I mean that in a good way. Max's work is not going to appeal to everybody, but that's fine. He's found his niche, and I suspect that there aren't many other artists doing what he's doing. This is another clue that Max is a bit further on in his career. He knows what he's about, and he's going for it. He doesn't necessarily feel the need to please everybody. I'd be surprised if Max was hired for something like food packaging, for example. It would be a bit of a weird fit, but it looks like he's doing a lot of what he loves. That's the impression I get anyway. He's got client names on the front page, but not too much distracting text. It's all about the images, which is perfect in my book. If I click on one of these images, I can see more if I want to. Yeah, great. The About page has plenty of info here. It's a great design for a website. Max clearly has a good sense of style, or maybe personal branding is a better way to put it. Nice. So look at what we can learn from an artist's portfolio website, even after a fairly quick look. I haven't read anything in depth on them, but I've got a pretty good sense of who these illustrators are now. And what I've done here is more or less reading a book by its cover, and you're not supposed to do that, I'm told, but I'm pretty confident that I've learned a lot about these artists. And if I'm a client, I'll know after 30 seconds of looking at a website like this whether I can hire the person or if I even want to hire the person. If you can do this kind of quick, objective analysis of your own website and portfolio, you'll see what kind of first impression you're giving to clients. And maybe that's not the impression that you actually want to give. You'll be able to see areas of your work that could be improved and possibly discover some things that are missing. You'll know if you're representing your skills in an accurate or in an appealing way. Hopefully you can even see what kind of clients you would be appealing to or not appealing to. And then you can make whatever changes are necessary. I really believe it's useful to try and think about your work from someone else's point of view because you are not the best judge of your own work. If you can get your portfolio reviewed by someone that knows what they're talking about, that's even better. Philosophically speaking, you should only be competing with who you were yesterday. But professionally speaking, you need to know if your work is good enough to put food on your table. Hopefully there's been something useful in here. And if you have any comments or questions, let me know. A couple more videos here, and don't forget to subscribe.